Hi, I'm Will.
I'm Norm.
Norm, we are here at Hiller Aviation in San Carlos, California, and we're about to learn something new.
Really, really amazing. We're here with John Collins, the paper airplane guy. So as you could guess, he makes paper airplanes professionally. How did you get started making paper airplanes?
Most people stop at some point. I just never did. So from about this size to 51 years old, so for the last 40 years or so, just been making paper airplanes. I love it.
Well, and your airplanes are all just, there's nothing in here but a sheet of paper, right?
Yeah, my specialty is really just origamic aircraft. Most people, when they get interested in the flight dynamics, kind of give up on folding and they go right to cutting and taping, and they get more interested in just airfoils. I thought, wouldn't it be cool just to have a really great high-performance set of airplanes that you could fold if all you had was a sheet of paper?
It's a pure design, no cutting, no tape, so it's not no two sheets of paper.
Right.
Well, how many designs have you designed so far?
Oh boy, there's about 60 on my website and a bunch more in boxes in my house. So I don't stop designing.
Well, you have a couple of them here, and
yeah,
we'd love
one
for
or
you
two.
to show us how these work and the principles behind these designs.
Yeah, so the most basic kind of principle is to look at, since all my planes are folded from single sheets, if you look at the wing size, you can kind of tell how fast they're going to fly. Something with smaller wings, like the red plane, is going to fly much faster than this. So this is really kind of a dart. If you look at this guy, really pretty fast. So this is a much slower plane with bigger wings, and that's a glider. And that's kind of the bright dividing line in the planes, the wing size. So even something with, that looks like a broad wing plane, but when you look at it, next to another paper airplane, you can see that even though it's got broad wings, it's actually going to be pretty fast.
Oh, wow, okay.
So the other thing that really comes into play, and particularly with the world record plane, was an idea called dihedral angle.
Okay.
And so it turns out that positive dihedral angle really helps stabilize a plane.
Well,
and that's
dihedral angle is?
It's the angle that the wings are attached to the plane. So it's a fancy way of saying how much up or down the wings are tilted as they attach to the fuselage.
So it's not just
plane.
the shape of the wings, but that angle. How do you keep that stable in a design?
Well, if most paper airplanes, they sort of flop open in flight. So you have to design a little bit extra in there to allow for the flop. So this is a positive dihedral angle design. And what that does is move the lifting surface up above the center of gravity. So it kind of acts like a pendulum. It'll rock back and forth and be stable when it flies.
Lifting surface means the area at which it's balanced when there's air moving over the foil?
Right, so this is, the horizontal wings are the lifting surface, and this is sort of a stabilizer here.
Okay.
So if the lifting surface is above where the most weight is, you'll have sort of a pendulum effect,
okay,
which will help it rock back to neutral. So if you throw this plane leaned over, it rocks back to neutral, and it keeps on flying. So if you want to get a plane to circle, what you can do is have the wings droop.
Ah, so it's a down angle.
Yeah, so that's called negative dihedral angle or anhedral angle, or the wings are just drooping.
So that means it won't stabilize itself in flight because the center of gravity is above the droop?
Exactly.
Okay.
So if I throw this in a banked attitude, it stays in a banked attitude, and because I've designed the center of gravity a little bit behind the center of lift, it's climbing. So it'll circle left or right.
Extremely convenient.
Or if you throw it straight, it does a loop.
So it's just stalling out at the top of that loop and then coming back down, right?
Exactly.
Very cool.
So it's three tricks. It looks like three tricks, but it's all the same trick.
And are these all just square pieces of paper? Are you using like origami style paper for this?
It's actually, I started in the origami world, so I've done a lot of folding with squares, but these are all just 8.5 by 11, just regular letter size paper. I wanted you to be able to just take a piece of paper and make a plane.
Does it matter how heavy the paper is or the stock of the paper?
This is all 20-pound paper like you find in any photocopy machine.
Oh, okay.
That was the other thing I wanted to do. Whatever you can find that's just generally available, and that's the stuff. That's the most common stuff. In fact, if you've got a piece of paper that's been photocopied onto once, that's actually better for making a plane.
Oh, interesting.
The heat process from the copier machine stiffens the paper a little bit, helps it hold a crease, and the printing is actually a microfine layer of plastic that also helps the paper hold a crease. So that's negative dihedral angle. You can look at the Wright Flyer and see that I'm not the first guy to think of negative dihedral angle. The Wright brothers knew that everybody else before them had designed an aircraft with positive dihedral angle so that it was stable in flight. So basically you got on board this airplane that was flying more or less straight and then tried to make it turn. And bad things were happening. No one understood what a stall was in those days.
Okay.
So the Wright brothers said, we don't know what that is, so let's make a plane that requires constant pilot input, that's not dead stick stable. So they designed one with negative dihedral angle so that it would require the constant control of the pilot. So if it started to do something bad, they could immediately get out of it.
So that was intentional. It wasn't because of poor construction. When you watch that Wright Flyer video, the wings are drooping intentionally.
Yes, that's intentional. Even when you see one hang in a museum like this, like Hiller Aviation here, I thought it was a mistake before I knew anything about flight. I just thought, wow, sloppy job putting an airplane up, right?
Yeah.
No, that's the way they designed that thing. If you're the paper airplane guy, what you really need is one that flies out, flips over, and flies back upside down.
Oh, no running.
No running. So tricky. I'm using dihedral angle in a whole new way here. So it's positive dihedral angle on the way out, keeps it tracking straight. If you flip it over, you can kind of see a lot of layers behind the center of lift. So that makes it do that violent tip stall. But look what happens once it's tip stalled. The wings can now be positive dihedral angle on the way back. So it tracks straight out, tracks straight back. I'm using positive dihedral angle both right side up and upside down.
Absolutely fantastic.
Now, I studied origami for a while, and I took all those tricks back to paper airplane making. And I'll be the first person to admit that nobody really needs a paper airplane with a swan head stuck to it, right? But if you could, why not? Kind of a fun plane. Now this is a plane that didn't start out to be the bat plane. It started out to be the seagull. And you can see I got the wing shape about it.
I can see the seagull there, yeah.
Yeah, so, but something really weird happened when I threw that for the first time. The wings kind of twitch. See the wings kind of shake a little bit?
They do.
Yeah.
Right,
So I hate it when I'm puzzled and I don't understand what's going on in my paper airplane. And so it took me about 2 weeks to figure that out. Once I figured out what was going on with that plane, I knew I could fold it with much lighter paper to magnify that effect. So here we go, same plane.
So this looks like a phone book or something, right?
Phone book paper,
Really
so
light paper.
really thin paper.
Oh, cool.
And it flaps.
So now it's flapping as it flies. So you can see when you flip it over, lots of layers behind the center of lift.
Okay.
A lot of weight in the tail of the plane. And I also gave it a bunch of up elevator here and down leading edge here. And what happens when this plane starts to fly, the center of the plane is very, very flexible because it's really super light paper. So it actually starts to stall because of that center of gravity behind the center of lift. So as it's stalling, the wings get pressed together. At the apex of the stall, no more aerodynamic pressure, the wings relax, it starts to fly, and then it stalls and flies and stalls and flies.
Oh, that's really cool.
So it's actually a terrible airplane, but it's a really fun airplane, paper airplane.
Fantastic.
So this is a fun plane. This is a plane that actually won an international distance competition. And the trick with that competition was you had to ship your planes all the way to Spain, and somebody else was going to throw them. So that's really common that somebody else throws your plane, but shipping to Spain, that's an issue because if you take something like this one that we saw flying earlier, it's flying pretty good, you put it in a box and hand it to the FedEx guy, it rattles around inside the box, and now instead of flying, gliding, it does that. So how to survive shipping? You make an aircraft with hexagonal tail feathers. Hexagon's one of the most structurally sound shapes ever, right? You find them in honeycomb in nature. You can really beat on the back of that plane, and it flies great.
Oh, wow.
These are principles that work best with paper, and not necessarily what they would use to build a real airplane.
The amazing thing about flight is that nobody really understands exactly how a wing flies. Now, this is going to blow your mind. If you've had any high school science, or even took, a little physics in college, you've been told that because a wing is curved more on top and is flat on the bottom, that the molecules hit the front of the wing and have to get to the end of the wing at the same time, and because the molecule on top has to go further, it has to go faster, so that faster moving stream causes lower pressure and causes lift.
Yeah.
It turns out that's complete twaddle. There's no rule that says those molecules have to get there at the same time. In fact, what happens if you put a different color of smoke on top and the bottom, you see that the smoke on top actually gets there first.
Wow, okay.
So that rule doesn't exist that we've all been
So
taught.
Bernoulli was completely wrong.
No,
Okay.
Bernoulli is wrong inside an enclosed system. That's what they never tell you about Bernoulli.
Oh, okay.
Bernoulli is the Swiss mathematician who was hired to get water out of wells.
Okay.
He didn't know anything about how anything flew. They applied that water out of wells idea to an airplane wing. So one of the things that happens provably with an airplane wing is that as the air hits the front of the wing, it kind of bunches up. So there's like this little cushion of air there. So downstream of that cushion of air, there's now a lower pressure because there's no air moving over the wing like that. So what might be happening is that the lower pressure might be causing the faster moving stream of air rather than the faster moving stream of air causing the lower pressure. This is
So
a
we got
source
cause
of
and effect, switch
this is a source of endless debate among real aerodynamicists. How does it work? Some people believe it's that air getting thrown downward off the tail of the wing, and it's just straight Newtonian physics. The motion this way equals motion that way. And some people are thinking, well, it's this Coanda effect where the air bunches up and it's actually the low pressure causing the faster moving stream of air. And then there are some people who would just argue Bernoulli all day long and you can't argue them off of it. But at this size, wing in particular, you're really dealing with not laminar flow. We have really good mathematical models. Don't worry, airplanes, full-size airplanes work just fine. We got really good mathematical models.
Whether the math works or not, the airplanes are going to keep flying.
They keep flying.
Okay.
And those mathematical models are very, very precise. We know a certain size wing of a certain shape will lift a certain amount, and that's bulletproof.
But they're describing what we've observed, not necessarily
empirical, right?
Yeah.
Very empirical. So what happens with a wing this size is that the air is turbulent over the wing mostly. And so, in fact, bumblebees, insects, and other small flying things actually cause the air to be more turbulent. If you look at an insect wing, it's got little veins in it.
Yeah.
So what actually happens, the air hits that vein, and it has little tiny rivulets of turbulence. And that causes the flow over the wing to approximate laminar flow. And that's chaotic flow. The point is it's chaotic flow. So anything this size has more chaotic flow than laminar flow. And that's the idea that I used in creating the world record design.
Okay.
All right, John, let's look at more of your paper airplane designs.
Well, this is a really fun one. It's called the Tube, and nobody really thinks this one flies when they see it for the first time. But it does something that most paper airplanes don't do, or at least if they're doing it, it's a big problem. This one is made to spin as it flies, so it gets its directional stability from how fast it's spinning.
Oh, okay.
So you throw it a bit like throwing a spiral football, wrap your fingers around it, let it spin as it flies off your fingertips. Oh. So that's kind of fun. Now, this is another negative dihedral angle design, but the cool thing about this one is the body of the plane is locked together, so that angle stays really snug where you put it, and it's a really smooth plane.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Touch and go.
So this is joined to the back, right?
Yeah, it's actually folded together. There's the strip of paper ends right there, and then there's a squash fold over the nose. So this is the locked fuselage 1, or LF1.
How many folds do each of these do your typical planes have?
It
Depends on the plane.
Yeah, it depends on the plane. The world record plane has 8 folds. That's a real economy of folds. Something like the Super Canard here has 50 or 60 folds maybe.
Okay.
And complex folds, pedal folds, reverse pedal folds, squash folds. So lots of layers moving at the same time.
And when you're assembling the planes, are you lining up perfectly precise using calipers and stuff like that to make sure you get the right distance, or are you kind of folding and judging the edges of the paper and stuff like that?
I try to use as few what I call rat folds, right about there folds, as possible. So almost everything you see here, the plane is referenced to interior creases that already exist. Okay. So it's really easy to duplicate. So you don't need a measuring stick, you don't need anything else with this collection of planes. You make a fold. If you fold in half, then you reference to that. Fold at a slight angle, you reference to that. So diagonal folds all become reference points.
Okay.
So it's
it's easily repeatable.
Yeah, you don't want to have to work. You don't want to have to go find other tools. It's just basic origami.
Very
so
cool.
This is the Super Canard is an interesting design because Canard designs in general are interesting. They're super safe. The Wright Flyer was a Canard design. Now, they didn't know anything about what a Canard design did.
Yeah.
When they invented the plane, everyone else who had invented a plane before them would put the horizontal control surface at the rear of the plane. A lot of people died trying.
Right.
And so they figured, well, maybe what's going on is that the air is dirtier back there, so we'll move the horizontal control surface out front. What they accidentally did was invent a really safe aircraft, and here's why. If you take this little wing and you angle it at a slightly higher, the Canard, and you angle it at a slightly higher angle of incidence, what will happen when it gets close to stall phase is that the little wing will stall first, drop the nose down, and keep the main wing flying.
Okay.
So the main wing never reaches stall phase.
So it self-corrects.
Self-corrects.
Very cool.
Great.
Yeah. So even this plane gently noses over rather than doing a violent tip stall.
Okay, but there's got to be a trade-off for that, right?
You get a little more, there's a little more drag, particularly on a small wing like that. You're creating a little more drag. But that's a pretty streamlined design, and it's one of my favorite designs because you can kind of see the interior of this old school kind of paper airplane in there, and then it's got all this other layer on top of it.
Very, very cool.
It's one of my favorite
still
designs.
Just one piece of paper, that's amazing.
Still just one piece of paper, here.
Oh, see, this looks much easier than the other way.
And you can just put that back together for me real quick.
Yeah, I'll get right on that.
So this plane, you can fly for much longer than that. So as you can see,
Unlimited flight time.
unlimited flight time.
A little bit of a cheat, though.
It is a little bit of a cheat, but it's an interesting cheat. It's kind of sky surfing. So this plane is made to fall very slowly vertically.
Okay.
And so it falls so slowly that if I walk forward with the cardboard, as long as the top of the cardboard's leaned back, I'm scooping up air. And at an angle. And as long as the air is moving up, the same speed the plane's moving down, it rides right there in that wave of air.
Okay.
And you can really kind of see that with this next design, because it's not an airfoil at all. It's called a tumbling wing. It's a little bit of a misnomer because it doesn't actually fly like a wing. but it does tumble.
So you're just surfing on the top on the boof of air that comes up the front of that
Yeah,
cardboard.
this thing is just falling so slowly that I could just create an updraft to counter that sink rate. This is a tumbling wing made from tissue paper, like you might wrap a gift with.
Okay.
So really super lightweight, and it's so small and light that you don't even need the cardboard anymore. You can just kind of do it with your hands.
So I'm going to work on putting this back together, but thanks, John. This has been fantastic.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I'll just see you guys in a while. We have more with John all week. Norm.
Yes, and also if you want to learn how to build these paper airplanes, John's website, thepaperairplaneguy.com, great resource, and you also have a book.
Yeah, a couple of books, and of course a third one coming out this time next year, in March next year, for the world record plane.
Thank you so much, and thanks to Hiller Aviation Museum,
thank you.
Kevin San Carlos, for providing us a great venue. We'll see you guys soon.
More
Until then,
stuff with John later this week. See you guys.
bye.